Thank you very much. I'm sure you will agree with me that that's been a fascinating collection of information, and we'd just like to do a really big thank you to all our speakers for the time and effort they put into preparing, so perhaps we could give them a round of applause. For those of you who arrived late or were concentrating at the beginning, I'm Helen Simpson. I'm the newly appointed Chair of Trustees Unlimited, and it's my privilege now to just lead us through the question and answers. We've been very disciplined and not taking question and answers at the end of each session, so that you'll be able to see the picture of all the things that the speakers have been saying as you pick what you'd like to ask questions about. For those of you who are worrying about your next meeting, we are going to finish on the stroke of 10:30 when we promised we would, so you can relax and use the time with us. We have the room for a little longer after that, so you can sneak off if you need to get off to your next meeting at 10:30, or you can hang around and chat to the other attendees, but also to the speakers. So, without any more ado, can I ask anyone who'd like to ask questions, and we, I think, have 2 functioning microphones, don't we? Have we got someone who could run about with the other one? Yeah. So there was a hand went up about halfway down. If I could ask you to tell us who you are, your organisation, and keep your question succinct.
Thank you. I'm Alistair Lomax, Director of the Philanthropy Company. I thought I knew about this stuff, and I'm really humbled by the amount that I've learned this morning. There's so much to learn. Thank you very much for putting it together, Ian and Emma. It's been an amazing experience hearing about the journey that everyone's been on. What training is available or can be available in this area? There's so much to do. Thank you.
Geetha, would you like to comment on that one first? And I don't know whether, Jim, do you want a word?
Okay, yeah, completely hear what you're saying in terms of the amount there is there, and obviously we could have had a much longer session on this topic. I guess in terms of sources of information, there are online sources of information around which we can access. I can see you shaking your head. So on our own website we have information in terms of both more information talking through what we've discussed today in terms of types of finance, sources of finance that are open, not just sources of finance that we have invested into, but much more broadly. There is a specific fund available funded by the Big Lottery called the Big Potential that to June's point about grant funding. So it's a grant fund that provides capacity building support for charities who are looking to go down this route and who may need some support at that early stage of getting their organisation ready, looking at their business plans, developing their models before then going on to look at sources of finance. I think there's a website that we were due to circulate around a little bit on that. So there's both, in addition to the grant fund, there is other information available. I guess in terms of support for trustees, one of the aims for today actually was for us to think about, in our market building role, what other support is needed for trustees in this space. So we hear the message loud and clear that there's more that's needed, and so we're very interested to hear kind of feedback from people here today in terms of what would be useful in terms of next steps coming out of this. But there isn't at this point in time a sort of dedicated programme for trustees to support them in this area, but there's potential funding to come down the line. One thing to say is that there's a new foundation that's been set up called Access that Alvinda is on the board of, and one of their main functions is a capacity building role. So they are at the moment in the process of thinking through what the needs are of the sector in this space, and very much seeking views from the sector on what they should be looking to procure and design and develop going forward in terms of supporting the sector in this particular area. So I think more to come, but not complete. I saw someone shaking their head, so I thought I would just take a comment if that's okay.
It was merely to add to what Alistair said. I've never sat in a room and felt so ignorant, but also screaming out for a course.
Okay, yeah.
It needs a cause, it needs a structure. We literally couldn't take it all in. I think I was going to beg for the slides.
Yes. Okay.
And it's just, I see Cass Business School also.
Yeah.
Honestly, we will pay for it, set it up, we will come.
There are lots. There are routes, and again, we can circulate information around. There are sort of on a one-off basis. There are courses, workshops available through a number of different providers, including Cass Business School. And I know some of the audit firms do similar things, and we should. I think what the gap that's missing really is how people find out about all of that stuff, and how it's all sort of curated in one space.
Yeah, yes, I just want to add, because the Cass logo is up there for my fault, because I'm with the Cass Centre for Charity Effectiveness as well as at BWB. Cass, the centre, already has programmes predominantly focused on training chief execs, CFOs in awareness around social investment and this space, but that is being expanded to support trustees as well. I think it is worth having a look at the Cass website and seeing what short taster sessions are coming up, as well as the more involved ones, which are more focused on the execs.
Thanks very much. And I think it's fair to say that the slides from today are going to be made available. So those of you who are panicking, that you want time to just read it over slowly and have a think, that information will be available. And I think it would be helpful if any of you have strongly held views about what you feel would be useful, if you would like to provide feedback on that. I'm sure if you were to email back to Emma and or Geith, that would be great. Next question. And if you can tell us who you are and where you're from.
Thank you. Tim Mack, Children's Food Trust. Agree with everything that's been said so far in this Q&A session, particularly the thought that maybe we could have a follow-up in a few months' time, because it's very fast-moving. One particular area I'm interested in is if everybody could give us an example of where crowdfunding has been or might be appropriate.
Yeah, Whitney.
So I guess crowdfunding is, I think Jim defined earlier, is just, getting people to participate and invest in something, getting a large number of people who can do a small amount of money. There are a number of crowdfunding platforms out there, as you'll know. Most of them tend to be focused on kind of mainstream investment opportunities. The ones that operate in the charity space tend to be focused on donations based. So I think at the moment there's no single dedicated crowdfunding platform for actually investing in charities or social enterprises as a technological platform. Because BuzzBank, I think, for example, does donations mainly at the moment. But I would say that, just for example, from our standpoint, 75% of the capital we've raised for charities and social enterprises this year has come from individuals. And in some instances, those investment amounts have been as low as £50. So there are lots of people out there who are very motivated to use their money in a different way to support charities and social enterprises.
I guess just one example, of a charity that's raised investment through that way is probably the Eden Project, who raised £1 million in investment, in effectively a bond, through a crowdfunding platform called Crowdcube, which is available to mainstream businesses in the main rather than charities. But I guess in terms of appropriateness, your question about when does it work, it's that sense of the Eden Project is very familiar to the general public. I think there was offers attached to the investment in terms of being able to visit, etc. So for me, I guess there are some spaces where you can see how crowdfunding might work really well. In my old world, in terms of sort of disability, I'm not sure that necessarily the general crowd would perhaps fund some of the work that some other organisations does. So I think something about local connection to public, perhaps services that are open to the public might be one.
Yeah, just to have a look at another model which I just think is interesting. I'm not sure how much it's done yet, although it is working, but is worth a good general dig, is the RSA one, the Royal Society of Arts, where they have their own dedicated crowdfunding platform as part of their outreach services, but it's amongst the RSA fellows and members. So I think these club-based ones, where you've got an existing constituency that might be interested in doing things, is certainly quite a good starting point. And what Geeta and Whitney were saying about the occasions where it brings value, I think you've got to think about what other value will it bring, other than it could bring, in the Eden project, it brought what they needed. In many cases, it can bring a really quite small amount of money, but a lot of outreach and a lot of engagement. So I think it's big engagement with a large new constituency. It's very interesting. The other one is where you've got an existing high volume, low amount donor base, where people might be prepared to do a bit more with an investment format. So that's another one of expanding the possibilities. So it depends.
Next question. We've got a hand up down here.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Ben Kennigan from a charity called Leap Confronting Conflict. We provide training for young people in prisons, the community and schools, helping them to deal with issues around conflict with the impact of reducing violence and crime. We've begun to start using that expertise which has been developed over 30 years to sell training courses to employers for whom conflict is often an issue, if not always an issue in the workplace as part of a social enterprise model. I've got quite a specific question in relation to that. Leap has done well over the years in getting the support of a number of major donors. And I'm interested, and particularly I think Geeta made reference to this at her time in Scope, with major donors who may both give money and lend money, how did you see the risks of them giving less if you ask them to lend?
Whitney.
That's actually a question that we get asked a lot when we go and present to trustees, you know, when they're making that difficult, challenging decision of should we go and raise money. You know, they're really worried about cannibalization of their donor database. And up until now, I've only been able to give anecdotal evidence that that hasn't been the case. But a recent report that Barclays Wealth just published last week was quite interesting, because in the people that they surveyed, only 7% of the respondents said that in making a social investment would they then reduce some of their philanthropy pounds. So that means that 93% of the people that Barclays surveyed you know, said that they basically invest out of a different pocket from the pocket that they give. And that's always been our anecdotal impression from talking to people like Golden Lane Housing, who were worried, you know, what the impact was going to be, or Scope, etc. So I think it's quite interesting. I mean, it's only one survey, it's only one particular constituent group, but I thought that was quite encouraging that 93% were saying it's additional money.
So when we were talking to our trusts and foundations about this, we explored whether this was going to be a risk not getting grant funding, but actually we used the whole developing the package as a way of leveraging more money. So the equation works if we have a bit of grant funding and a bit of loan funding in order to progress the project and in order to get the working capital for the first 3 years. So, and in all cases we've not had kickback on that. So I don't think this is a risk at all.
One thing to that was a specific example would be that an individual may be willing to lend you more than they are able to give. So there might be a choice to be made as to what the value of that is for you. So we had one individual who was willing to lend us 10 times as much as they were willing to give us, and in that instance we could use a loan and put that to better use in the long term, but that's not always going to be the case.
Thank you. I just wanted to say there's additional research going on at Cass and St Andrews, which is endorsing what Whitney has said from the Barclays research, that people think in a different way when they're investing. It is quite literally the two pockets model. But what I see in practice and what is coming through in that research is that the way you present it in the first place is key. Are you tapping into the person as a donor or still along that mindset, or are you going in on a totally different angle? That's the key point. The other thing I wanted to make that we are seeing happening is where private individuals are putting money in, using social investment tax relief and getting the tax relief, the sheer fact of getting the tax relief tends to lock them into an investment type mindset. But then you can approach them when the annual or the interest comes up later and get them to donate the interest, and then they can get tax relief again on the interest, which is not taxable anyway. So that's quite cool.
Just adding a comment of my own, I've done quite a lot of work over the years with homelessness charities and with those that deal with deprivation in urban communities. And I think one of the things from the learning from that is picking up what Jim was saying about if you're approaching through a different door, you will need to frame the proposition and how you tell the story differently. So for charities for whom this is a new world, it is really worth thinking about how it looks through the eyes of the people through the two different doors. And lots of the story about what you're telling about your work, about your beneficiaries, about how passionate you are about it will be the same, but you will need to frame the story differently. And so it would be good to come at it in that way. Right, next question. Ooh, right at the back. Watch Neil is going to be very fit. Perhaps you can tell us who you are.
Hi, so I'm Alison Mack from ActionAid, and I was interested in the social impact bond, and I wanted to know if it had been used in payment by result contracts that are international development, so not with the results being measured or in the UK.
Geeta may know more than I do. My understanding is that there are a number, they've come up with another acronym for social impact bonds in developing countries, and they're called DIBs. So Development Impact Bonds. And the idea there is that the payer might be, someone like DFID, for example. And there have been a couple of examples dealing with very specific issues. For example, cow sleeping sickness in Uganda. And so the idea there is that an intervention which is proven to work has been designed, and then an international donor agency like a DFID or a World Bank or someone like that will then be the one to pay for the outcomes. So there's a number of different interventions that are in the process of being developed. So I'm happy to point in the right direction. I can't see who asked the question afterwards. Yes.
I haven't really, as Whitney's outlined, the issue there is probably more about the payers. So here it's the commissioner is normally is the public sector here in the UK, and with overseas development, it's either potentially foundations or other development agencies overseas who are the commissioners. So that's really what the issue is. I think there is something developed around education, but similarly to Whitney, I can connect you to people who will be able to give you more information.
Just a quick added point on that. We need to avoid the idea that in a social impact bond, a commissioner, public sector party, is always the payer. In a lot of the early ones they have been, but we are seeing them emerge with private individuals paying for outcomes, with private corporates paying for outcomes. So we've got quite a wide sense as to who the payer is, but I agree with Geeta that on the development ones, it's so much of it's a question of location and who the payer is.
Another quick comment from me, building on that. Part of my guilty background is I am an escaped outsourcer. I can feel the hiss come back from the room. And I think there is a very sort of specialist area in the whole payment by results world, and a whole question about skills and capability for charities and particularly for trustees in that. And so it links back to some of what you were saying about the change of the skills that you need in the people around you. That might be the skills in your finance structure and whether you feel the need to divorce them in the way that Jim was explaining earlier. Or it may be that perhaps you want someone with a commercial background or even an outsourcing background to join your trustee body. I used to run a volunteering programme at BT, and I would say the most common request that we had in the last couple of years I was there was for experienced outsourcers to either come and provide critical friend or trustee support. So really, I guess it reinforces what June was saying earlier, linked to your specific example. Some of the pressures that it places on charities to become suppliers in an outsourced context, particularly as subcontractors, because an awful lot of the way in which charities fit into this are subcontractors or subcontractors to subcontractors. So I guess perhaps there's lots of nodding going on around here at the front. That might be a skills challenge for you that you might want to particularly focus on. Next question. About halfway down. The microphone is coming.
Thanks. I'm Robert Milburn. I'm a trustee of the Parks and Green Spaces Forum, but actually this is a question really in a personal capacity. Like everybody else who's spoken, I think I have my eyes opened by what I've heard. I'm a regular donor to a number of charities, but I'm also an investor. And I suppose my question is, how do I, as an investor, go about identifying the potential opportunities to invest some of my funds into the sorts of things we've been talking about today?
There's a couple of different ways you can do that. There's an organisation called FX, which is fx.org.uk, and they have been set up. They're a non-for-profit, sorry to use that term, investment club, basically, and their aim is to provide a window on social investment opportunities. So they're not a market in the sense of being a recognised investment exchange, but so that's one website which is well worth visiting. And then, of course, there's us. You can get in touch with us. We have a database of about 5,500 social investors, and we make them aware of social investment opportunities that come up. But I would say FX is probably a good, as much kind of whole of market as we're going to get probably at this point. Yeah, social stock exchange is another. I'll pass it on to you, if you want to.
Our own website has a similar, some information that faces investors who are looking at potential opportunities that might be out there. We're not regulated, like my legal advisors and our legal counsels in the room, and we're not authorised, we're not to make promotions, but we do showcase the opportunities that are out there. Alistair mentioned the social stock exchange, so Golden Lane Housing themselves are listed on the social stock exchange, and that performs a similar role to FX in terms of providing a shop window. Slightly different organisations, I'd say larger entities who are raising finance, mostly I think enlisted in listed markets, but again offers you those opportunities to see what's happening.
Slight update on social stock exchange. It was originally a shop window marketplace type thing, rather like FX. It has now got a trading facility attached to it, so it links to a listing on ISDX, which for those in the city is the old third market. So it does have its own listing capability now, so it's a listed market.
Next question.
Good morning. My name is Bruce. I work at Pilot Light, and I'm a trustee of a London-based charity called Care Trade. Pilot Light helps charities plan more strategically and be more effective, and Care Trade helps young autistic Londoners get into work. My question is about the small and medium-sized charities that I typically work with and I'm a trustee of, but I'm often asked the question, how do we become investment ready? So I'd like to synthesize some of the discussion today and actually give me some top tips.
I mean, it's a really, really good question, because you really do need to get investment ready. And as I said, we were lucky we used Social Business Trust, and I think they're definitely worth the conversation. There was also 2 sets of grants, and the Big Lottery grant is, you could work with somebody like Clearly So. They're also extremely helpful. I would have thought Pilot Light itself have to think about how it does this, frankly. You have an opportunity there to actually create something within the Pilot Light system, in fact. But it's one of the barriers to entry, really, is that talking about taking our money and becoming money ready is like a completely different world. So I can only talk about my experience. We've had a good experience with SBT. We've had a good experience with Clearly So.
And also, I think if you talk to big issue, sometimes they are able to help you to kind of rethink where you might go. And I'd be very interested to see how the big lottery, what's it called, something to change, whatever it's called, big potential, that's it. Video I keep thinking about, is how that will shape up actually, and indeed access. And there's, the other thing is there's some small investment boards, like I sit on one with CAN, and we're looking particularly at small investments to get people more ready. You have to be in a particular, there's not a lot for the kind of very small SME, so 2,000 turnover and stuff. So we're looking at how supporting them. So they've got a website as well, and they're, you can get them through CAN Investment.
Great. Next question.
Hi there, I'm Andy Challis, I'm a trustee from Dreams Come True. A comment was made earlier by one of your speakers about the various risk appetites of trustees between maintaining a stable charity and looking at step changes and growth opportunities. Can you tell, one of your speakers talked a little bit about how charities can mitigate that risk as they take on debt and leverage to make step changes in their scope and their objectives, how they can protect the broader charity's objectives from that downside risk?
We're just having a little bit of eye contact going on along the front row. We've got several people who'd like to talk to you about that one.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and one that the Board of Golden Lane Housing has wrestled with. I mean, in essence, there are some important first principles, I think, to establish, and for us, one of them was that we were going to do absolutely nothing that would put at risk in any way, shape or form the interests of our existing tenants. As Stuart said, many of the board members are themselves parents of people with a learning disability. They really understand the need for long-term security for our tenants. So when we were doing the modelling, we basically made sure that we were able to offer quite a risk-averse business model. So we did lots of scenario planning, what if things went drastically wrong? How would we actually cope with that? What would we do? What if our assumptions weren't right? We went through quite a lot of those scenarios. When I talked about the amounts that we raised, so for example, we raised £11 million last year. We could have raised a lot more. We could have raised 15 million. But we said, no, we don't want to raise 15 million. We know we can deal with 11. We know we can pay that back. We modelled it. We can, even if things go a bit wrong, we can still pay that back. We're very confident. You really need to make sure, in my opinion anyway, that you're very cautious. So I think in this whole space about social investment, it's not like speculating. If we can be innovative, yes, we should be innovative and creative, but we also, I think, need to be cautious and bear in mind the interests of our existing tenants. And what we've been able to do at GLH is both protect those tenants, so the quality of service that we provide is exactly the same, in fact it's higher. We haven't cut the quality of what we're doing, if anything we've increased it, but we have been able to rehouse many more people through this innovative mechanism without being silly and going beyond where it's sensible to go.